Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back on the second day of Financial Conclave 2022 that we are conducting virtually. So, for this panel discussion, we are going to have a very exciting and very amazing topic that is on the ransomware. The ransomware as a service is evolving from last 1 or 2 years. There are new variants and there are new ransomwares are evolving, and they're evolving as a service. And we have seen that it is impacting the organization across the globe, not just India, but largely financial sector is at the first target of the state actors and also some of the APT groups. And that's why we thought of discussing the ransomware as a service and the anatomy of ransomware as a service and how they have evolved since last 1 or 2 years. So that's a topic that we are going to discuss today. To discuss this topic, I'm having eminent panelists with me to discuss this particular topic. I would like to call my panelists one by one on the screen. So first, I would like to welcome Mr. Prashant Singh, who is Director Cybersecurity Technology Specialist for Microsoft India. Welcome, Prashant.
Thank you, Vivek.
So second, I have Mr. Ramesh Gurram. He is a CISO with Multi Commodity Exchange (MCX) of India Limited.
Yeah.
Hi, Ramesh. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Vivek.
I have with me Mr. Pawan Chawla, who is a CISO and DPO for Future Generali India Life Insurance. He's facing some challenges. He'll be joining us in a minute. Okay, he's
Yeah.
already here. Great. Yeah, Pawan
Good
is already
afternoon,
here.
everyone. Yeah,
Yeah.
good afternoon.
And last but not the least, to moderate this panel, I'm having with me Mr. Ramachandra Kulkarni, who is a Managing Director, Technology Risk for a Goldman Sachs. Welcome, Mr. Ramachandra.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Without a further delay, I would like to hand over to Mr. Ramachandra to set the tone of the session. And I will hand over to Mr. Ramachandra. Please take it forward from here.
Sure. Thanks, Vivek. As Vivek said, what we are trying to discuss today is an interesting aspect of ransomware, although there is pretty high attention in the subject of ransomware. What we are going to discuss today is one aspect of it is pretty emerging pretty fast, is ransomware as a service in terms of how this has come about and what is happening in this space, and what are we likely to see, and probably what organizations can do about it. So while we begin with this particular session, probably I'll spend very little time in just setting the context in terms of evolution of ransomware. I mean, probably all of us know it started around 8 years back with MapSam. That was when the first variant of ransomware came, and really the one uh, wave which kind of made the difference and kind of did the before and after scenario was WannaCry in 2017, and followed by NotPetya in 1917, where first time we saw a nation state sponsored ransomware attack. So those were two distinctly important attacks in terms of ransomware space, and it has started kind of rapidly evolving after that. In 2019, we saw uh, organizations having sprucing up their recovery procedures, having their backups, etc. So what we saw was something called as double extortion, where we looked at a name and shame game, where obviously the people who were doing this didn't just stop at taking a ransom or asking for a ransom, but also publish the data to cause reputation risk. That is what we saw in 2019. And in the last 12, 18 months, it's all about targeting critical infrastructure and supply chain. And that is what we have seen. Either it's the example of Colonial Pipeline, Kaseya, and what's something which is closer home. Probably we have all read in the newspapers in the last 24, 48 hours is one of the players in the aviation industry suffering from this in India. So it has been evolving and evolving rapidly, this particular space. And in terms of ransomware as a service, again, this started with pretty well-known criminal gangs on the cyberspace. A couple of them, Darkside, Revel, who actually started this in terms of ransomware as a service capability, where they kind of built up all the capability in terms of encryption tools, communication, etc., and then kind of leased it out to fellow criminal gangs, and that is how it started. And this allowed the entry bar for these criminal activities to be lowered, because all the expertise was provided somewhere else. So what we have also seen is in the last 15, 18 months is ransom demands are up, and the cost of cleanup in terms of what happens when you start paying and then starting recovery and then the whole associated cleanup, and that has doubled in terms of the whole process. The average cost of ransom is multiple times compared to what we saw 3 years back. And then, in fair amount of cases, despite organizations opting to pay for a ransom, we still see only a minority of them have got all the data back. They have only got part of their data back. So that's something that is worrying in multiple aspects. And with this background, probably we will see today in terms of what are the specific things that we are seeing in the industry. And as Vivek said, we have an eminent panel, and I will be joined by my colleagues on various aspects of this. In terms of the threats in the domain, while I have covered in a fairly high level, Pawan and Ramesh, if I can ask you, Pawan, starting with Pawan, in terms of what you have seen in terms of how the threats have evolved in terms of scale, sponsorship, sophistication, and how the technology is deployed. What have we seen in these last 2-3 years compared to the first 2-3 years of ransomware? We'll begin with Pawan and then we will follow it up with Ramesh.
Sure. Thank you, Ramchandraji, for setting the tone and setting the background, and that actually give a good insight on the how the hackers have evolved over a period of time. Ransomware is a not a new word for us, but the way it has been acted today is definitely eye opening, and gives shivers to many of the organization across the globe, and especially the security professionals who are responsible for managing security for their organization. So ransomware, from being a small attack or code impacting few systems, now had become a full-fledged service. It's a business model. It's no more an attack, or no more a service. It's no more a threat. It's a business model which has been working and evolving every year. Today, if you look at it in 2021, if I take an example, then the average amount of a ransomware which they might have got has reached up to 6 million. That's the average pay they have got. Now if we talk about a ransomware service, now it used to be just a small attack earlier. Now it has now people can buy ransom kits at as low as $40. They can hire affiliates to plant a attack in a particular organization, starting $10 per hour, and could go up to $1,000 agreement as well with those people. So that's how the evolution has happened, and it has not stopped there. Now today, if you look at it, it's not only the ransom which we are talking about. They have become extortionists as well. They don't only encrypt your data or give you a key to decrypt. They actually steal the data as well from the organization, and they further demanded a further ransom to not exploiting the data on deep and dark web. So that's how the business has evolved of ransomware in last couple of years. Now if you talk about the methodology, the way it works is the way that they are planning an attack is today, that has also evolved as well. They are not only looking at organization who has a large volume of data. They have gone to a level today where they target organizations who have taken higher cyber liability insurance, because they know that it's a sure shot money which they are going to get. where in case such kind of in case they are successful in planting an attack in a particular organization. So that's how the business model has gone today. In the dark web, anybody can go hire as get associated with a RaaS service provider, pay them a specific fee which is as low as $40, and then $10 per hour, have hire them for a certain period of time. They will help them out identifying a target, planting a target for them, configuring the RaaS kit for that particular organization, looking at the exploitability of a particular organization, and then compromising the system machines, asking for money to decrypt the files and the systems which have been encrypted, and then taking it forward. So it has that's how it has evolved. The revenue models have also changed of ransom in past few years, from a normal one-time fee to subscription fees. There could be a one-time license fee, or there could be a portion of profit they may ask for. So that's how the threats have evolved today. When as you mentioned that we should there is an evaluation of threats which is happening. Unfortunately, we don't evolve that way, and we put limited controls in securing the organization. But yes, if you look at it, the overall industry of hackers today, they have much more advanced features. They have much more advanced technologies to plant attacks in different organizations.
Yep. Thanks, Pawan. We will come back to the economics part in a bit deeper discussion later in this session. Ramesh would be interested to hear your views as well.
Thanks, Mr. Ramachandra. Thanks for setting a tone, and thanks, Mr. Pawan, starting off with a good introductory of the evolution. So, what I would look at this evolution part is, if you see, it all started in the year of 1989, when Joseph Pop, some researchers started up putting in embedding some malicious code into a small floppy drive and distributed across 20k thousand users and tried to compromise them and get some benefit out of it. The moment it started in 89 and the evolution level, if we see now, I would look at three different aspects. First one is the level of scope. It all started at individual and small group of people were the victims. Then it slowly evolved to big organizations and a kind of group of organizations they used to target. And then it has started to target countries, and that slowly it has evolved to target at a global level. The classic example, as you mentioned, Mr. Ramachandra, WannaCry is the best example to say that it's also called a global cyber pandemic. So around 150 countries across the globe got impacted, and almost many millions and trillions of amount ransom was paid to the hackers to get the critical business data back to the organizations. So the first point being the clientele whom they are targeting. The next one I would say is this evolution has become a ransomware is available to not just for a techie guys. It is simple. A person who doesn't know coding, who doesn't have any understanding of what is software, what is malware, how it is built, how it operates. A non-techie guy can have the access to the ransomware. So that is kind of a evolution what we see nowadays in the ransomware world. And the third part I would say is earlier the target victims were more of financial and BFSI sector. Now these criminals are targeting to spreading to the many critical infrastructure and critical sectors like health, education, power, space. All those critical sectors are also under continuous attack, and they are being targeted in a more focused and more dedicated manner. So that is one of the evolution I would see in this recent years.
Thanks, Ramesh. I think that absolutely makes sense in terms of how it has evolved. Pretty much picking it up from where you ended in terms of motivation and what drives these actors now. Probably we can delve a bit more deeper into the who, why, what, and how of ransomware as a service. And probably for that, I'll come to Prashant, you, and then Pawan. In terms of how are we looking at what are the factors that motivate this? Is it just, as they say, money, 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 or is there something else? And more importantly, from Prashant, you in terms of specific techniques, advancements in terms of how technology is deployed, how the capability is leased. So, if you can throw some light in terms of how all this is evolved, that would be great. We'll start with Prashant and then move to Pawan.
Sure. Thanks, Mr. Ram. And I think I would say overall, the motivation levels have been very different. As you rightly pointed, Mr. Ram, the criminal gangs have got involved, and there is also the concept of specialization. Ransomware as a service itself, or launching a full-fledged attack requires so many moving parts. The creation of the zero-day payload itself, getting a backdoor entry into the environment to be able to execute the attack with lateral movement, and then running the ransomware, communicating, and finally taking the delivery and sharing. With so many moving parts involved, the different motivation levels, the players or the actors in this particular field, they have started focusing on specialization rather than launching a full-fledged, the entire workflow cycle. They are targeting specific parts of this overall business, and the motivation for a lot of individuals, especially in the tech domain, is that extra income which they can use this expertise and get that extra money. And that COVID has in fact increased that propensity to land up on that side and start doing that. Typically in the overall ransomware, the workflow, I would say there are three key stakeholders, actors. I would say the RaaS operator itself, who is hosting or building the ransomware as a service itself, and they are also hosting the websites where the compromised data can be published. They're maintaining support services, different support models. They also host payment processing. So that heavy lifting of creating the payload itself is done by the RaaS operator. Then we have access brokers who are providing capabilities like backdoors.
Your audio seems to be breaking.
Okay, sorry. Am I audible?
Yeah, I mean, the problem is it's breaking. I don't know if it makes sense to rejoin while Pawan takes over.
Yes, sure. Absolutely. Let me.
Yeah, I think now it's
rejoin.
slightly better.
Hold on.
Now it's slightly better.
Okay. I think the Wi-Fi is creating a bit of problem. Let me know if
now it's
thing
much
breaks
better.
again.
Now it's much better.
Okay. Let me continue. So we were also talking about the access broker service, and that actor typically is providing backdoors into the corporate environment for the affiliate to utilize in terms of RDP access, compromised credentials, and botnets. And then the RaaS affiliate, who's the actual attacker using these services, uses these capabilities to
Prashant,
attack the overall network.
Just 1 minute. I think it's because of the headphone. It's cracking a bit. So can you try without headphone if it is possible?
Okay. Sorry, just a second. I switched off my video. Is it better?
Yeah, it's a better.
Is it better or is it still?
Yeah,
it's better now. It's better now.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for this interruption. I'll continue.
No worries.
So, yeah. So in terms of how this overall capability experiences work, as the execution gets launched, the attacker, the ransomware affiliate will launch that attack, and then eventually, convince the customer, the target audience, to pay for the ransom, and then the RaaS operator would continue to provide these services in terms of the website hosting, the capabilities, continuous communication, and putting the pressure, and then also providing eventually the payment services through which the overall execution.
Hey Prashant, I think we are getting the same issue again. Maybe, as Vivek said, it's probably due to the earphone. We'll come back to you if you probably want to fix it or either re-log in, whichever way.
Okay, I'll try for sure.
Yeah,
thank you.
Pawan, if you could please throw some light in terms of, especially technically, what we are seeing, what we are reading, what is the trend in terms of how sophisticated it has become. Pawan, you're on mute.
Yeah, I hope I'm audible. Yeah. So we are talking about evaluation of ransomware. The way you look at it, I mean, the way it started as a hobby when few people started hacking certain systems as in an interest of just fun. Now today that has become a business. And the motivation behind all these things is not to nothing other than either making a political or social point, or a radical hackerism, or financial gain, or impacting a particular organization, probably because of business competition, cyber warfare, or it could be an intellectual challenge. These are the main reasons behind it. And people have also, if you look at it from the hacker's mind, it's easy money. They don't have to work for all the time. They keep on doing fun activities which they used to do, and then now they are getting paid for that as well. And that is what is motivating them. There is no restriction of time, there is no restriction of there is no work pressure. It is fun for them. And slowly and gradually it has become a business model. And that's where we as an organization are getting worried as well. I mean, if they have ample of time and they keep on doing such activities, we will always be at a threat, and it will always be a challenge. So it earlier, if you look at it, that you there used to be malware attacks which used to happen. There were phishing. They keep on happening. The phishing has also evolved over a period of time. Some of the attacks which we don't hear too much these days are man in the middle attacks, or denial of service, or SQL injection, because they know they're not it's not going to bring them enough money. What is going to bring them money is the ransomware attack, where they encrypt and they actually impact the data. Leaking of data is no more important today. It is because people realize that the data which the hackers also realize that some of the data which they are exploiting today is more of a marketing data. Like today, if you look at it, what could be the data which can get exploited? It's the name of an individual, is the phone number of an individual, the email address, probably. I mean, if you look at it in and around our ecosystem itself, this is data which we vomit every day. In some of the other side, we keep on sharing this kind of a data. Even if there is a alumni form, these are the simple information which they ask for along with your date of birth. We keep on filling those forms in schools, colleges, or any other competition. Freebies which are getting circulated, or get distributed, we give all these data very happily. And that's where they also realize that this is not going to help them out. I mean, they have to have something else in their hand. And that's how the evolution has taken place. And it has gone to a level where now, from just being planting an attack in an organization or encrypting, they are actually stealing the data as well. They have become extortionists, and they would like to encash that at a later stage. Today they may give you a key to decrypt your data, but after 6 months they will definitely going to come back and tell you that we have the actual data as well, give us more money, otherwise we'll put it on the internet. And that's how
Yeah.
that's the evolution we are seeing today.
And just to add, absolutely right what you mentioned. Just to add one last point on that, we've also seen in some cases like nation states actually sponsoring that in terms of providing funding, providing expertise. So it's not just criminal gangs getting involved. In certain cases, right up to countries getting involved in this, just to
See,
have their own.
we keep on hearing this thing that the World War III is going to be the cyber war. It's not going to be
Yeah,
the
yeah,
physical war. So
Absolutely.
slowly and gradually you'll see it will become it will see a day of light.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, just to
So,
add to what Pawan said, so
yeah,
data, not only PII and PHI, now these guys are targeting to exploit the this thing, what we call a business critical data, or what you call trade secrets and IPR data. So those are such a kind of important and crucial data for any organization. If that is lost, and the existence of the organization will be at stake. So slowly they are moving from stealing the personal data to the business critical data, or IPR,
yeah,
intellectual
makes
property
sense.
data.
No,
So
absolutely makes sense what you said. Just keeping the same discussion thread in terms of economics, like how this money is sought, how is the money paid? Like we have heard on and off, that people pay through bitcoins, people pay through A method, B method, C method. So how the economics of this kind of work? I know, Pawan, you touched upon in your initial comments, but Prashant would love to get your thoughts in terms of what you have observed as part of your own understanding, your own research within Microsoft, in terms of how this whole economy or ecosystem of how the money gets sought, paid, and then consumed work.
Sure. Am I audible? Better, I hope. Mr. Ram, just to confirm, am I audible properly?
Still your voice is cracking.
Still, yeah.
Okay, the voice is cracking still, is it?
It's fine now. Can you come a little closer, Prashant?
Yeah,
Maybe I
probably
think.
you should come a little closer.
Is it better now?
Yeah,
Yeah,
much
it's
better.
Okay, so apologies for this. You're right, Mr. Ram. The overall economy, in terms of deciding the ransomware, it's ransom itself. Starting from the RaaS operator providing various services and tiered, service model. Whether it's just the ransomware package or various surround services like lead sites, payment processing, going after the victim, posting, the data itself. All of those experiences demand the kind of, what is the how much we buy, or the affiliate pays to acquire the service. And at times it's
Prashant,
also on a profit sharing model.
hello,
Yeah.
Prashant. No, we are losing you again. Actually, it's breaking horribly.
Okay. I
We'll come back to you, Prashant, in a minute. Ramesh, would
Hello.
you want to add something in terms of this question, in terms of the sheer
Hello. Am I audible?
economy and what has been your observation?
yeah, yeah, Mr. Ram.
Yeah. Is it
The
better now?
economics.
Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, Ramesh, please go ahead.
So in this economics, whole economic chain of this RaaS works on the two main individuals I would like to mention here. One is RaaS operators, and the other one is affiliates. So these two are the game players of this ransomware as a service online. So these guys in turn will have many more players, like developer who is expert in creating the ransomware kit, and the person who is one more person called distributor, and one more person called money lender. When the ransom is paid to the operator and affiliate, how that money needs to be laundered, and so that the tracing of the payments are not being able to done by anybody. So, having said that, there will what these criminals will try to do when they encrypt any data, they try to send a dedicated browser how this payment needs to be done, and then they will have a dedicated setup of payment gateway. When the client tries to pay this ransom, so they will have a dedicated payment gateway, so that the payment whatever is paid in terms of bitcoins are directed in such a way that there will be a finance manager who will do this finance management of bitcoins and distribute this profit among the operators. So there will be one more aspect to it, is there is a profit sharing model. They will work on monthly subscription, profit sharing, or maybe pure profit. So like that, there are what we call different offerings from the ransomware attackers.
True. That's what you said is absolutely right. It's a whole ecosystem in terms of how this finance is sought and paid, and then how it actually reaches the so-called endpoints in terms of people who work for it. So yeah, it's a very well-oiled machine, so to speak. Pawan, you would want to add any last word on the economics part of it? You're on mute, Pawan.
Economics is always fruitful for them, because it's a sure shot money which they are going to get, and they trust me, they are much more advanced and much more facilitated with facilities than we could think of today. Like Ramesh has already touched based upon, there is the fund manager, there is a complete ecosystem. So whenever they plant an attack, they create a payment portal for that particular victim as well, through which the payment need to be directed. Now it's up to the victim who has to decide that in whichever form they have asked for, how they want to route that. And you need to have people in place who can help you out in fulfilling that requirement. Now it could be a cryptocurrency, it could be a Bitcoin, or it could be dollar, an online transmission of plain money, in which they could ask for. So that is, suppose the money is paid, it get distributed among. Now, that's how the chain is working today. It is much more
Yeah,
transparent for them than we could think of. It is much more trustable that we could think of. And then it is it is much advanced than what we see in our ecosystem today.
true, true. No, absolutely, you're absolutely right. Uh, just on the same thread in terms of the sheer ecosystem, how it works. Probably I'll go back to the step number one of this in terms of how these targets are identified, and like how do I know that corporation A or corporation B or company C or company D, individual F, how do I target? Like what is the quote unquote intelligence that they use to kind of get to this? That these are the three potential people or firms that I need to attack. So what kind of intelligence that they kind of play around? Prashant, if you're good now, we can come to you first, and then come to Pawan.
Sure. I hope my audio is better now.
Yeah,
Uh,
yep, yep.
uh, in terms of deciding, the targets, the whole economy or the intelligence focus on the fact that what is the value of the data itself. What would be the return of the investment? This means the criticality of the sector and the data associated with that sector, whether it's a financial sector, health sector, high net worth individual or the government sectors. Okay, that is one aspect the way attackers are gathering the intelligence. They're also targeting company revenues and the profit models and trying to understand, basis, the overall returns. That is also a factor of decision making. Size of the organization also can be a deciding factor, whether you want to do small scale attacks, which can be launched within a single day and you can quickly realize small, amount of money, and you can keep repeating that, day after day. Or you can target large organizations where the time frame can be days and months, but the payment can be, potentially large. Different other motivation levels, or I would say intention, whether you have you have intention of pure play damage. If you are a nation state sponsored actor, that also we have seen on and on. Socio-political motivations, like, you are here to prove a point, and that's how you're targeting a particular individual or a sector, or particular geographies where, there are wealthy geographies where, the investments and the return on investment is high. These are so many factors which are involved in isolating which particular target individual or the organizations we should go after. Thanks,
Got
Mr.
it.
Ram. Yeah.
Got it. Thanks. Thanks. Absolutely makes sense what you mentioned. Pawan, would you want to add anything? And I'll come to Ramesh after that.
Few things which a threat actor could have think of as before targeting is from where they can get a show short money. Like I talk about when I introduced this particular topic and I initiated that, yes, there are the couple of things which I could see that from various forums and all, I could read. Though I would consider myself lucky of not being a victim so far, but yes, what I could read and see that what other organization have experienced and the way they have handled the situation, there are few aspects which are very important, is to see the threat actors which they are looking at today is one, that whether they will be able to get the show shot money from there or not, what kind of cyber insurance the organization has taken. Second, the IPR Ramesh talked about. So in case there are intellectual property in that particular organization which can be exploited and can be used in any form, is another mode of motivation of attacking a particular organization. The third is how popular the organization is, because the damage of the reputation is much more important than anything else. So that's another factor which needs to which they is been considered today. And fourth is the amount of critical data an organization is dealing with. Specifically, if you look at it today, now from a consumer based companies to healthcare industry, the target has moved. Now most of the hospitals who does not have a good ecosystem of cyber controls, I would say, they have been targeted recently. Now look at the recent examples of hospitals have been attacked in US because they have a lot of data. They deal with consumer personal information. They deal with which could impact each and every individual. It's not only a particular hospital or a particular individual that they are targeting, but it's the entire ecosystem which has been targeted, and that has been challenged today. Similarly, I mean, when we talk about because in one way or another, it is going to impact the individual and the overall ecosystem. So that is what has been considered today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Pawan. So, I mean, if these are, this is the evolution, this is the advanced setup that they look at, the kind of sponsorship, funding, etc. So, what are the governments doing across the world in terms of sheer policy framework or new laws? Is pretty interesting space. And probably I'll begin with one or two examples that we in Goldman Sachs have been interacting in the last few months, and then I'll ask Prashant for his views as well. So, I mean, number of governments across the world are looking at specific laws around ransomware. Uh, I mean, certainly US has taken the first step in terms of introducing the Ransomware and Financial Stability Act back in, I believe, if I remember right, September or October last year. And basically, what it says is any ransomware paid, which is paid by any organization, it has to notify the Treasury Department's financial crimes network. So there isn't any obligation. I mean, today there is no obligation of reporting. Now there will be an obligation of reporting. The second most important thing which that act talks about is before making any ransomware payment, which is greater than 100,000, again, there has to be a reporting, and it has to be reported to FinCEN, which is basically the authority which looks at all the cyber crimes or financial crimes. So within 2 business days, they have to report anything which is beyond 100 days. Sorry, 100,000. So that is what the laws are looking. There are similar laws in Singapore, which is now being contemplated, as well as in UK. There is another act within US itself on Office of Financial Assets Control, which talks of how facilitating ransom payments has become an explicit crime now, and what are the penalties and violations that you will be subject to, and what punishment you will be subjected to. So there is fair amount of regulation, which is also the governments across the world are kind of initiating. Uh, these are some of them. Obviously, there are a number of other countries which are doing, and I'll let Prashant talk a bit more on this subject of policy and governments, what they are doing across the world.
Sure. Thank you, Ram. I would say I would not be highly informed from a regulation or law perspective, but I would definitely comment on some of the policy and procedures being thought through from a preparedness perspective. And definitely the intensity, I mean, the way the US government or the Department of Justice elevated the stature of ransomware, attacks to a terrorism, to an act of terrorism activity after the Colonial pipelines and the whole SolarWinds, attacks, which targeted a lot of the government sectors and definitely impacted the energy supply as well. So there's definitely a lot of intensity in the prioritization of these attacks to a bigger stature. I mean, even things like ransomware and digital extortion task force has been created, which works, which tracks nation-based, ransomware and extortion, activities are happening, and also helps in Department of Justice's preparedness on overall policy making and responsiveness. Similarly, various security organizations are acting on it.
Yeah. Thanks.
do you want me to? Yeah, I can probably take
Yeah,
a pause.
thanks, Prashant. So,
Thank you.
I would turn it over to Ramesh first and then to Pawan in terms of an Indian context. What you are seeing in terms of what is happening from a policy space. Is there any guidance which comes from regulators, either from the government or the financial regulators? What has been your experience in terms of policy making and guidance? We'll begin with Ramesh and then go to Pawan. Ramesh, you're on mute. Okay, let's switch over to Pawan and then come back to Ramesh.
Sure. So one of the things which I can talk about, and I see that it's a clear move by various agencies in within India itself, is bringing in the awareness on cyber threats and cyber attacks which are happening. There are stringent timelines which have been put in place, and now it has coming to a level where people have to organization have to report if something is suspicious is been seen in the organization within 6 hours. So that's one thing which has been done. So as an ecosystem, yeah, if I talk about ecosystem and addressing all the cyber threats, including ransomware, it still
Hello.
need to mature. It is still have not matured yet. That is something which needs to be bring in. There has to be a clear guideline which should come up, which tells that what to report and where to report and how to take it forward. And most importantly, because there are multiple agencies today interacting with various organizations, especially regulated driven organization, there has to be a single forum and single point of reporting which needs to be bring in, because it is practically impossible to report at multiple places at the same amount of time, or because currently what we are seeing is one agency says that it has to be reported in 6 hours, the other says it has to be reported in 48 hours. So that should not be the case. I can give you an example, like not experience, but what I've heard is in Singapore there is a single agency to which you
Yeah.
have to report, and then it get populated to the other agencies as well. Similar kind of a model has to be bring in India, where organization should report to only one controller, and then this information get passed to the others as well. And that's the kind of ecosystem expectation organization may have, and we would like to see. And that's how we will be able to form up a particular policy, including the steps what an organization need to follow in case they face any kind of a cyber attack, including
Yeah,
ransomware.
absolutely, absolutely. And I believe the government is looking at specific guidance fairly shortly on this, something on the lines of what we spoke, what US has done. So that's coming pretty shortly. Uh, Probably the last few minutes we will use it for just as a response mechanism as an organization. What are the things that you could do? Obviously there are a number of things, but what are the, let's say, top two or three things that we can do to kind of prevent these type of attacks? What is also true is lot of this in terms of prevention is doing the simple things right. Just keeping your basic hygiene right of your systems, that will ensure 50-60% of remediation. That is what we have observed. But I would want to get your thoughts, all the three of you. We'll begin with Ramesh. In terms of just mitigation, response, prevention, what are the top two or three things that you would recommend? Ramesh? Ramesh, you're on mute if you are speaking. Okay, we'll go to Prashant, please.
Yeah, hi, Mr. Ram. Uh,
Go ahead, please. Go ahead, Prashant.
yeah, thank you. I hope I am better this time
Yeah,
in the audio.
I think
Many
it starts
apologies.
getting angry after 60-90 minutes, your
Seems
voice.
like it.
Yeah,
Well, it's like the bad day today for me. I would say, Mr. Ram, you are absolutely right in terms of, we all being grounded in the basics. Like there are a lot of technologies available to support there today as a post-breach response or, in a detection or response scenario. But ensuring organizations are looking at the weaknesses as a subject matter. This means ensuring review of the infrastructure, doing vulnerability assessments or penetration testing, ensuring the network segmentation, ensuring the upkeep of various kinds of hardware and the assets, including digital assets, IoT assets, OT assets. Those are the basics to ensure that the prevention can be stopped. Even as you go to the cloud, ensuring that the things like access mechanisms, either multi-factor authentication for app access or cloud infrastructure access, ensuring the limiting the number of permissions, also ensuring posture management to ensure all aspects of security hygiene are met. If these prevention and defensive controls and hygiene controls are done, your requirement of skills to be able to be more prepared to respond and invest in more specialized tools will be, I would say, your reliance can be less, because every tool requires a lot of skill and expertise to be available. Having said that, having an effective tool strategy for an overall response, defensive, pre-breach and post-breach, that will absolutely help, because the new tools in the range of things like EDR, XDR, CASBs, all of these also utilize the power of the cloud and use machine learning to determine the attacker tactics basis the events they unfold. And that's why it is critically important to have a tool strategy. But you are very right, Mr. Ram, that the defense, better preparedness would be the best strategy, and those basics have not changed for the last 10 or 20 years, I would say. Thank you.
That is true. That is true. And I'll speak like a news anchor. Pawan, you have just 30 seconds for your top two things.
Yeah, so I will only talk about three things: implement reliable and new advanced endpoint protection, because our parameter has changed today. It has become from office to a laptop or a machine, which your employee is using today sitting at their home. Encourage people taking multiple backups to ensure that in case some kind of attack which happens and which could impact the system, they should be able to recover the data. Third thing is the do some advanced anti-phishing simulations in the organization, because that will give an awareness in the organization and the employees to know that what to do when they face such kind of an attack. And the last thing which I wanted to touch upon is invest in training employees, because everything whatever happens with a click or some mistake done by any a particular individual. So the more we keep them educated, the more we engage them in phishing activities and spread the knowledge, the more we will be able to secure our environment.
I think with the number of people working remote, number of people working in multiple places, the how do we educate, how do we make sure our people do the right things always is a big challenge. And at least I can speak for Goldman Sachs, we are investing quite a bit more in terms of training. So with that, I guess we are at time. And thanks all of you for your insights and your perspectives on this subject. Obviously, there is a lot more to talk, but we are at time at this moment, so I'll turn it
So
over back to the way.
we are having few questions, Mr. Ramachandra. We can take
Okay, do
one or
we
two
have
questions
time?
which we have, yes, which we have from audience.
Okay,
So
sure.
one question is pertinent to the gathering the intelligence and the information from a dark web. So the person is asking that whether government of India or certain or any private entities can proactively look for the intelligence or maybe the information from a dark web, which will get information about the this kind of transactions of the ransomware service happening, because most of those transactions happen on the dark web, right? So is there real time way that private organization or government can do monitoring and share among the peers, so that those kind of incidents can be prevented? Anyone who wanted to take, maybe Pawan or Prashant?
So let me take that question. So this is not legalized, so I'm not sure
Yeah.
that how you will be able to pull it out from the dark web. But in case you know how to pull it out, that's something which you can do, and there are services available to pull that information out. There are entities in India which are of ethical hacking organization. They can help you out in pulling this information out, because it itself is an organized crime, so things cannot be made public. But whatever is happening, you will at least get a visibility in the deep and dark web, which can be used to stay aware or stay updated in the ecosystem itself, and can take proactive step to protect your organization.
Yeah, I mean, I would only add by saying yes. I mean, as Pawan said, pulling out from dark web is a different animal altogether in terms of taming the beast. But just as an intelligence gathering and sharing and consuming. Uh, we as a Goldman Sachs in US, we have like something about 14 sources of information. It could be on FBI, it could be FSI, which is the industry body. There are a number of other regulators who do the feed. Here also, the India CERT does do the feed. I know because I've spoken. I don't want to be speaking on their behalf, but obviously you will need to look at how you can consume it. How do you get it to your organization? How do you consume it automatically? If once consumed, how do you act on it? So the whole workflow needs to be done. But does CERT or does somebody in India give us this intelligence? Absolutely yes.
Thanks, Mr. Ram. Quickly, as Microsoft also, we have a similar responsibility. We do have, we do gather intelligence from dark web and through directly and through broker agencies. Across with, we also have the Microsoft Security Intelligence Association, MISA organization, in which we engage and connect with a lot of industry OEMs and partners in terms of intelligence sharing as well. And we also work with the government of India and certain in terms of large scale attack patterns. We do share intelligence as well. So we do empower our solutions as well, and do we work with customers and government bodies across the world. And we also we have digital crimes unit who works with governments who take down the larger botnet networks, like cutting their off, zoning them, isolating them. Impacting their DNSs, sinkholing them. So we do a lot of these activities worldwide to ensure wherever possible we can help overall customer base and
Yeah.
government agencies.
I think
Yes,
that is the
absolutely.
positive development which has happened 5 6 years back. It was more of I mean, talk so much, but we don't share intelligence, or attribution is a problem. Those were the discussions among all the people who are practitioners. Now that discussion has kind of gone away. I wouldn't say it has completely gone away, but now it is how do I consume, how do I act on it, how do I reduce the risk. So which is a right direction in terms of reduction of risk.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Definitely there is a positive development happening in this space, Mr. Ramachandra, because organizations are coming forward to share their information, to have interactions with especially in cyber intelligence, how this can be shared across and how it can benefit to the organizations to have more proactive and more kind of effective controls in place to handle these kind of attacks.
So I have a liberty to take one more question because we are just heading for lunch break. So I'll take one more question. So usually in case of ransomware, we talk the only solution there's ransomware we can save from is the prevention, right? So there's a question about is zero trust architecture today is the most trusted architecture that organizations can adopt to prevent ransomware. So that's the question.
Uh,
Yeah.
I would
Can
like,
I take that?
Yeah, go ahead, Prashant.
yeah. See, I would say, like Mr. Ram mentioned, zero trust architectures, integrated threat management strategy, post breach, a response strategy, tooling strategy. There are so many viewpoints, but the idea is that as long as you are grounded towards the best practices, all of these frameworks and mechanisms are helping you achieve that view. In fact, zero trust, yes, it's one of the industry benchmarks. It does help you create an overall framework, not just from a ransomware perspective, but overall ensuring the overall cybersecurity posture is bettered. But I would say as long as you have a good defense strategy and good response strategy, you can fit in any framework. Those things will still keep you grounded in terms of responsiveness. So best preparedness is the best defense, and having a post-breach strategy, which is also part of the zero trust, uh, definitely you are covered from a recovery and response perspective. I will leave the tooling part because there can be no end to tooling, but being more informed, doing your own homework, and deciding the best tools basis your organization risk appetite. I mean, there can be everything and anything can be bought to fit a framework, but at the same time, basis the budget available and the overall best practices, you will decide and the risk aspects of which particular assets in the organization you have to save more and protect more better. Those kind of things help. I would also recommend and suggest adopting a cloud strategy is also one of the approaches through which organizations are bringing better service resiliency. But I mean, that is also some of the approaches which are helping organization as well. Thank you.
Mr. Ramchandra or Pawan, quick insights on this.
Yeah, I mean, I would only reinforce what Prashant said. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's ironical whenever we do a bit of root cause of any reported ransomware incident, anything, it always almost boils down to something wasn't patched, something wasn't uh, done properly, something which was end of life was running. It is always one of these things which come out. So, I mean, I will only go back to the best practice is keeping the best hygiene and making sure your basic stuff is done correctly. 80-90% of the threats are mitigated by that. Yes, there will always be something extra, but if you do your basics right, you will have a good handle on most of your threats.
I would just like to add, just come out of the illusion. There is no 100% security. So let's face the fact that whatever we are doing, whatever we are suggesting, whatever we are implementing, whatever we are following are the best practices, and we should continue to follow best practices and ensure that whatever we are aware of and whatever is in our control stay protected.
Okay, great. Ramesh, any closing
And
remark?
also,
Yeah.
I mean, touch wood,
As
there is
Mr.
a problem. Now we are also, as an organization, uh, actually working with a consultant to see how do we actually do a negotiation. Touch wood, if we get into a situation. So, I mean, that is the other level of preparedness that we are looking. That, I mean, obviously, there are a number of organizations which are targeted. Financial services are a bit more targeted than anybody else. So we are taking classes actually from a global company in terms of how do we negotiate if we ever get into the situation, rather than running like a headless chicken when we are at that situation.
So I would just like to add one more point here. Sorry, Rameshji, I'm just taking it up because it
Please
makes
carry on.
relevance to what Ramchandra sir has said, that there are only two types of organization: one who are breached and one who don't know they are breached. So since you are preparing for it, so that means there are organizations who have been breached, but they don't know until the other somebody comes and tells them that they have been breached, and now it goes into negotiation and other aspects. So that's everybody has to be prepared of. Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. So for me, I am a strong believer in, as Mr. Ramachandra has rightly pointed out, we should keep our basic cyber hygiene well intact, and then from there on we should follow the best practices and minimum level of kind of security ecosystem always maintained in our organization. And next big part, what I would like to highlight is the ransomware is going to evolve. It is going to stay here, and it may evolve double extortion, triple extortion, and whatnot. We cannot imagine now. Now, we all know the problem. Now, the only way out is having a proactive cybersecurity best practices being followed, and keeping all our controls intact, having continuous monitoring, making the users well aware of the threats, and of course, the technology part of it, implementing best of class processes and technologies, and having a overall control over all these people, process, and technology aspects of security, then definitely that is going to help us to counter all these kind of attacks. Let's be optimistic.
Okay, thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, everyone for insightful discussions. And I think on the closing note, I would like to thank each one of you for the insightful thoughts and some of the learnings and insights that you shared with the participants today. Definitely keeping the basic rights and sharing the information intelligence, going for a cloud service model, keeping the service available. I think those are the insightful points and thoughts that we have definitely got. So I thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. I would like to thank, and we'll close the session. Thank you, Mr. Ramchandra, for
Thank
moderating
you.
this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone. Thank you, everyone.